Hi guys, this time I'm doing this Zvezda IS2, Josef Stalin II, heavy tank from 1944, and the original plan was to do like a deep, snowy diorama. I struggle to get the effect of deep snow, but it's certainly a bad weather diorama. I've done a couple of snowy ones recently, and I've done very light dusting of snow. But on this one, I wanted to do it kind of a bit more bogged down. So I'd 3/4 built it, and I just wanted to build the sides up. I wanted the tank to be kind of slogging through kind of deep conditions. There's not much to make in the model, apart from you can see all the filler that I used on the turret. And then I've got an old ICM Einheitsdiesel German telephone wagon, I think it was called. But I just wanted to have an abandoned vehicle in the drifted in the snow, sunken into the snow, and the road to be sunken as well. So you can see how basic that is, a simple piece of board. And the night before I put PVA glue on. It's not entirely stuck properly yet. And I'm just taking the hard edges off the polystyrene there. The IS2, you read some stuff online and it's like, oh, it was amazing, and you read some other stuff and it's like, no, it was rubbish. I think the Russians were at a similar position to the Germans, where they may have had a good design, but the country's capability by 1944 was pretty slowed. The Germans had the Tiger, the King Tiger, the Panther, and if they'd have been turned out in the numbers that they could have been, and if they'd have been as effective as they could have been, then they may have been amazing. But the end of the war was in sight, and everybody was knackered. The IS2 came into its own though once it got to Germany, once it got to Berlin. It was just super destructive. 120mm naval cannon on it. They could fire 2 rounds a minute, I think it said. And the 88mm cannons on the Tiger, the shells just bounced. The shells just bounced off it. So in a way, if you could get it into position where it was needed, then yeah, it was a monster. Worth looking at the pictures online if you're doing a diorama with one. You got to bear in mind that the advance speeded up towards the end of the war. So these tanks almost always seen with tank riders, giving soldiers a lift. They did some serious miles, even though they only went 24 miles an hour. Also bear in mind that they took a battering in that time. So I've not done too much damage on the body of the tank. But when you look at the photographs, they're very often smashed to pieces. Their mud guards are just gone, and they're covered in dents and marks. It's just worth bearing in mind, because you want to make an authentic diorama with something like this. What would be a great diorama with an IS2 would be the apartment buildings that you see in photographs once they're in Berlin. The kind of Victorian era apartment buildings, and that's a real challenge to build. That's why mine's just stuck in mud, in the snow. But I'd love to do something like that in the future. I'd love to do some Berlin street fighting kind of diorama. But yeah, as you'll see, I have got a couple of soldiers to go on the back of it. And Yeah, so it's winter 1944. I think the tank was 51 tons. I think it only carried about 16 or 17 rounds. So, the task at hand was getting it into position where it could do the damage. The issue wasn't that it could do damage. So I've got my usual mix here of coffee grounds, like used cafetiere water, with the coffee grounds in, just to give some texture. Plaster of Paris, and I don't think I didn't put any tea. I didn't put any tea leaves in it. Like I say, the intention was pretty deep snow, quite a road sunken into a snowy environment. So really, I didn't have any big ideas with crafting terrain, and certainly didn't have any big ideas with painting. I don't think I only painted the road. So all I want to achieve at this stage is just to cover the polystyrene. Almost invariably nowadays I do two tubs. I don't know if my tub is too small or if I just feel a bit more confident doing a skin of plaster over the top and then looking at where I'm at when it's dried and going over. I think that's just how I feel comfortable. Maybe it's just the tub's too small for the dioramas I'm doing, the sizes that I'm doing, and I always end up going back and doing a little bit more. But I did this here just to make more of a realistic snow drift kind of effect. That was what the second layer of plaster ended up doing. As for the particular model, yeah, no issues really. Some fit issues with the leading edge of the hull going onto the leading edge of the underside. The back clicked into place really easily, and the front I could not work it out. It was like a 2mm gap, and I ended up filling it because I just could not. The superstructure of the plastic underneath, there was something stopping it from marrying together. If anybody's done this model, I was presumed I was doing something wrong. I have no idea, but I definitely had it the right way around. I didn't have it back to front. I ended up lifting it off and trimming down all the excess plastic underneath, and it still wouldn't match together very well. What I got with this kit, no decals came with it. Obviously, it should have some decals. But I got 2 sets of tracks. So I've got a spare set of tracks now for doing the indentations that I do, for making track marks across muddy roads, which is quite nice. Luckily, I had spare decals from a T34, spare decals from an SU-152, and spare decals from a couple of other Russian tanks. So it's not this particular, the way I've done the decals and the colouring, I don't think it's a particular authentic specific tank. That ICM model actually was more, probably more expensive than the tank. I think in the UK, I think the ICM Einheitsdiesel telephone wagon is about £26, and the IS2 Zvezda tank I think was about 18. I can put the links underneath, but the truck The wheels didn't sit very straight, very level. So the truck was a little bit skew-whiffed. And even though I'd enjoyed building it, and I like the paint job, I had put it aside really to use a diorama. It was no longer like a main vehicle because it didn't sit very straight. So the tracks, the saggy tracks of these Zvezda tanks, yeah, I just use big wads of blue tack to push them down and use super glue. It's not ideal, I'm sure. It's not the best way of doing it, perhaps, but I wasn't ready to put the upper hull on because I wanted to paint and put some mud effects on the lower hull. So anyway, it dried, and it looked all right in the end. You've just got to force that indentation in the time it takes for the glue to dry. But as with polystyrene cement, super glue doesn't like to be on a paint covered surface, so I had to bodge it for a little bit before it worked. I'd still much rather have the vinyl tracks than where you're piecing the plastic plates one at a time. So like I said, I did go back with a thicker mix of plaster to make a kind of snowdrift effect on the truck and to touch up the bits of plaster I'd already done. I do prefer to use trees just to kind of break the flatness of a diorama. And I had two kind of humps, one at either side, that you can see. And I could have put a tree on each, or a tree on at least one. But when I came to the end, I was just like, nah, doesn't need it. There's enough height and depth and relief to the terrain. Because they're only in production for the last year of the war, even though they made 3,000, they tend to be very samey in photographs. I've not seen a single one that's even painted white. They're almost always that Russian protective green. So almost always they have the identifier of the white stripe around the outside of the turret, and then a white cross on the top of the turret, so that planes can see that it's a Russian unit. And that's almost always rough on the box art, and in the photographs it's like mopped on the white stripe, and it does look good. But when you're applicating something where it's put on roughly in real life, and you're replicating the effect, it's too easy to just get it to look like you've just done a bad paint job. So I left it off. I also left off the red stars because most of these they don't. I don't think they have red stars. They tend to have a number on the front sloping armour, and then a number on the side of the turret, just in white. So I had some text in Russian from previous tank model, and I'm just going to stick that on. Oh no, there's not a lot of information about the IS-2 out there. I kept seeing the same things written on different websites. Just that there'd been an action on the way to Berlin where I think 10 IS-2s had engaged 14 Tigers. No, 41 Tigers. And they'd killed all 41 and lost 8 of their 10. So the actual armament of these vehicles was something else. Was off the chart. And it's lighter than the King Tiger. It's lighter. No, it's heavier than the Panther though, which is 44 tons. This is 51. It's certainly a big unit. You have to make a lot of space for it on a diorama. So like I said, I just painted the road brown. I started painting the actual terrain at the sides, but I stopped because it's just it'll be covered by snow. For which I just use the baking powder. If you've seen my previous videos, the tub that says cornflour, it's not cornflour. I expect cornflour would go mouldy, but the orange tub there that says cornflour, that's just full of baking powder and bicarb. So there you see the effects. I wanted to thicken the snow because you can only do that one layer. Once you put some PVA glue on, you can only really do that one dusting. And once the glued surface is completely covered, you've got no more options. So then what I did, I started spraying on a watered down, diluted mixture with PVA in it, thinking I could perhaps do a second layer without brushing, because obviously brushing glue on a second layer would just make it very gloopy and make it clump together. So you can see there I'm squirting some glue on. Obviously, because it's diluted, because it's got water in it, the baking soda started to react with it. It started to bubble up a little bit and fizz, and it went kind of grey and like gel kind of consistency. So I didn't do it too much, but then when it did dry, it dried hard and white. So it's something to look at again in the future, but I think that would be a way of making thicker snow, to put a PVA, a diluted PVA, additional surface on it, and then to go again with the baking powder and let it fizz, let it bubble, but when it dries like a crust. Because I've activated the baking powder, hopefully it won't just suddenly change in its dynamics now and go mouldy or something like that. But I've never had any problems with the snowy dioramas that I've done in the past. You know, I wasn't bothered about seeing the paint scheme of the truck. And I'd done some rust effects and some burnt effects on the truck, but I wasn't bothered about seeing that. Because what I wanted was just the snow and to see the shape of the truck beneath the snow, to show that something has been disabled along that road, and then a tank presumably has nudged it off into the snow to get it out of the way. If you see, there's a wheel behind the back of the truck. I've cut one of the wheels in half, and I've stuck it into the snow as though it's half buried. This is where I'd kind of seen that I'd put the moisture in and it was reacting to the baking powder. So I'm going back over it now with the dry dusting through the tea strainer to cover the moisture, because I didn't want puddles. You see there's a channel for the tracks, and then there's like a mound of snow in the middle of the road, and but I've not put that where the tank's actually going to go. I've just put it in front of the tank. So I dusted this with pastels. I used like brick red, because I thought if it's been fighting in inner cities, I quite like the idea of it blasting buildings. It would be covered in brick dust. And then beyond that, it was a matter of muddying it up, but also the ice and the snow would be part of that. The mud effects as well, because of the conditions that it's driving through. So I've just used PVA, and have a play with it. If you're using this kind of homemade snow effect, then you just have to have a play with it, don't you? If you bought snow effect, then I'm sure it just brushes on easily and dilutes in some way. I know there's some good packs that you can get. With ice and snow and wet snow and frozen water, there's packs that you can buy that you can do all these effects straight out the tub. But for me, part of the fun is botching it myself. So that's why you can see I'm kind of what I'd practiced on the diorama, that is making the baking powder, wetting the baking powder and trying to make it thicker. I'm kind of now using what I learned from that to get it gloopy on the wheels. There's a lot of experiment. And it's a comfort to me to know that when it's in position on the diorama, it's mostly hidden from the top of the tracks down. So, as you can see, I've added the anti-aircraft machine gun, 12.5mm anti-aircraft gun on the top there. I've added 2 chaps. I had intended to add another one. They're the Tamiya guys that I've used before. Soviet assault troops, fantastic box. I thought there was 7 in it last time I made a video, but I think there's actually 10 in it. Fantastic investment that, if you've got a couple of Russian tanks to make. So brick dust, snow, mud. So that's it, guys. Used some of the Vallejo wood colour to make like a an irony kind of sandy mud effect. But I have gone gone a bit mad with the snow. Tried to cover the tank lightly and the ground quite heavily. Some gun on it, that. Like I said, you could see the Russian text on the side is just from a previous Zvezda model that actually came with its decals. This one didn't. I think it's quite a huge company. It's a Russian board game makers. And it's good. I'm enjoying the tanks that I bought. I bought a big batch of the tanks, and I am enjoying making them. So I think that there is a British office. So if I could have written off and said, my decals haven't turned up, I'm sure they would have sent me some in the post. But I had some lying around in the box anyway. Yeah, I was pleased with the snow banking up behind the truck. Really pleased with that, actually. Pleased with how the truck is beneath the snow, but you can kind of see it. You see the shape of it. Obviously, I've not let any snow get on the chaps at the back there. So let me know what you think, guys. This is the Zvezda IS2 Josef Stalin 2, just in deep snow, winter 1944. Leave comments, and I don't know what I'm going to be making next, but I'll put something up. I'll put a diorama up again soon, and it won't be a snowy one because I've kind of exhausted it. Thanks, guys.